Greetings and welcome to Hexed Encountered. I'm Joe. In this video, we will be doing a first look at the brand new Band of Brothers game from Worthington. It is Stalin's favorite, and it is designed by Beresford Dickens and Jim Cron, who is the creator of the series. And as I mentioned, it is published by Worthington. I did back it on Kickstarter and just received it yesterday, and I am super excited to play it. I love this game series. Striking cover art, as always. The cover art for all the Band of Brothers games is usually fantastic. And this one, as you can see, is Stalin's favorite. So this is the first game in the series to feature a Soviet unit on the cover, and it follows the Ghost Panzer, which was on the Eastern Front as well, but that was from a German unit perspective. And of course, the first game featured the 101st Airborne, and then there was also the Texas Arrows game. So the series continues to feature various games from various militaries, and this one will have a unit from the Soviet Army, the Soviet Red Army, and we'll take a look at that here on the back. So this is the 6th game in the series, and it's squad level combat during World War II. This is the 2nd Guards Tank Army. That is the Stalin's favorite from the title. As it says right there, 2nd Guards Tank Army was considered the favorite of Stalin. This module follows them from a desperate defense of the Kursk salient to a seesaw battle to close and keep closed the Korsun pocket, to the final act of bitter German resistance in central Berlin. So you got some varieties of time and space, I guess you could say, right? You've got various locations and various times during the big war between the Germans and the Soviet Union in the Second World War. 16 scenarios include most of what is associated with the end of the war: T-34-85, the Su-152, the IS-122, or Joseph Stalin II, as it is otherwise known. The IS-122, those are both varieties of, well, this is the IS-122 M44, which is also a variant of the Stalin II tank. You've got the King Tiger, the Jagdpanther, the Volksgrenadier, Volkssturm, Jabos, Sturmovik, and many more. The system includes suppression, proficiency, casualty ratings, and not knowing how your units will respond until they are needed. Based on years of research, this game is completely different from any other squad level game. It is very realistic, but the realism is baked into the system. Players will spread their troops out, fire, and maneuver in a realistic fashion, not because a rule forces them to, because the system rewards this realistic play. Yes, this is a really solid system, pretty innovative, and it does reward using historical tactics. So let's take a look inside the box and see what we've got in there. Now, as is always the case with Worthington, the components are always top-notch. I have not opened the box, but the box itself is very nice. You can see it's also jam-packed, like it doesn't actually fit all the contents that are in this box. So open the box with a slightly rude noise. Then you've got your scenario books. There are actually 2 in here. And we'll look at that in a moment. And we have our rule book, also 2 of those, and a sheet about the this specific game, 12th Guards Tank Corps from Kursk to Berlin, and some player aid cards, as you might expect. Then we have some counter sheets, and of course the maps as well. So these would be the counter sheets, and we will look at all of these in a moment. And of course the maps. So this is just basically what's in the box essentially right now. You've got 4 hard maps mounted. You fold out like so. They are double-sided. So you ended up with 8 new maps for your game. And of course we've got the nice counter tray that Worthington graciously adds to their games. That's greatly appreciated by me. One of the really cool things about them is they generally put one of these in here. We've got 2 10-sided dice as well. 1 black, 1 white. So now let us take a look at some of the contents of this game. Okay, we're going to start off with the rules. So unlike a lot of games, this doesn't have a cover on it. It's just purely rules, and there are 36 pages of them. So this is version 2.3 of the rules, and they go into the introduction here. It explains where the name Band of Brothers for the series comes from. Of course, a lot of people of our generation equate it with the book and the HBO series that covered the 101st Airborne in Europe in World War II. And that was, of course, the subject of the first game of the series as well. So you've got your list of abbreviations here. Of course, you note that there are any changes are in blue, and any rules that are specifically for the Pacific but are optional or not needed in Europe are in green. The game turns, so this gives you the brief overview of the sequence of play. You've got your operations phase, where players will alternate moving and firing. The route phase, certain units will have to check if they route. The melee phase, where units in the same hex have melee combat. And then, of course, the recovery phase, where your units will recover from suppression and game counters are removed or advanced. Components, we've got maps, we've got dice. The main die is a 10-sided die, D10, and is used for all rolls except for artillery drift. 0 equals a 10 on this die, so a roll will yield a result between 1 and 10. Game counters, they depict units such as infantry squads and weapons teams, individual guns and vehicles, and assets such as aircraft, artillery, and illumination. Infantry units have two sides, so you do have a full-strength side and a reduced side. And then squads, most of the infantry counters represent infantry squads of 9 to 15 men. They have 5 movement points. You got your weapons teams, which, as you might expect, are support weapons like machine guns, mortars, etc. Reduced units, they'll have a stripe. I think flip to the reduced side with a horizontal stripe. Yes, they have a horizontal stripe. This is the company identifier. And some of the early games in the series don't have one of those. And down here, out of frame a little bit. You got your firepower, your proficient firepower, your melee firepower, your range, and then your casualty ratings. And when we do a gameplay, we'll talk about that. If you're familiar with the series, the system, you know what all this stuff means. Here's our morale, various levels. We get into that. Basically full, suppressed, and I forget what the second level of suppression is called, but there's 2 levels of suppression. And it gets progressively harder for your units to actually take commands and act them out based on their morale. So if you get a shaken, maybe it's shaken, you'll get, it'll be harder for them to actually carry out the commands you want them to. Here we have some infantry facing, which is optional in Europe, but is required for the Pacific. Then command points. So you use your command points actually to abstractly represent overall leadership abilities of each army in the battle. Each player will take an appropriate number of CP counters, and a CP may be used for one of the following functions. So they let you do things like reroll a morale check, move if the player who's moving second may perform an action with 1 unit before the other player at the start of a turn. Use a command point to do that. And for an infantry unit to conduct final op fire, it needs a command point. You can re-roll a melee but not close assault combat roll, and you can only do that once. And then you can increase infantry proficient firepower by 1. Proficient firepower is typically like firepower that is not your first fire. So your first fire, you get slightly more firepower. And then proficient firepower would be for like second firepower. You got your operations phase, the operations range. So that's a representation of command and control. A used marker, which you would typically see in most tactical games, indicating that a unit has taken an action and is done, basically. Marking units for op fire. So instead of moving or firing, you can select or elect to set a unit to op fire. So they'll be sitting and waiting for the enemy to come into range, basically. And we have our movement rules. Squads get 5 movement points. Weapon teams get 4. When using units as part of the ops phase, units may be moved up to the limit of their MPs. There are, of course, terrain effects as well. Then you have some withdrawal rules: assault fire, declared retreat. This is a new rule here. Follow me. A player may spend an additional command point on an unmounted infantry unit to increase its movement points by 1 for that phase only. You have your fire rules for infantry, restrictions and effects, executing a fire attack. You got your suppression and morale, so that's suppressed and fully suppressed. Those are the 2 levels I couldn't remember a moment ago. You have rules for your morale check. Casualties, op fire rules, final op fire. Final op fire is similar to op fire, except it is conducted by units that have been marked as used. So, and it can only be used against units that move adjacent to the unit that is that will be doing final op fire. Then you have your route phase, and very detailed on how routing works. You can see it covers, probably 2/3 of a page. Then we've got the melee phase and the recovery phase. So you've got all your phases there described out. And we have our line of sight rules, the decoy counters. So there are concealment and decoy in the game series. And of course, there is always fog of war, which is more of an optional or Pacific rule, because it's all in green, as you can see. Fog of war and combat events. The Japanese in the old breed game, which is the only game so far that's Pacific theater, you have combat events that can affect both sides. I believe, if I remember correctly, it's been a little bit since I played that game, but I do like it. Scenario cards, and then stop. So this is where you can read up to this page, which is only 9 pages in, and you'll be basically good to go for playing the game, at least initially, if it's your first go round. And then once you get here, you start getting into the more advanced stuff. Guns and vehicles, of course. All we were talking about previously was infantry. Now you've got vehicle counters with facing, right? So they will always have facing. Then you have gun versus vehicle or infantry. You have your morale, the same as the infantry has, proficiency, casualty rating, and the unit type. And so this is obviously a gun. Then this is a vehicle. That's a Type 95 Hago tank, which is Japanese. And you've got your same thing, facing arrow, gun versus vehicle or infantry, your front armor, rear armor, or side and rear armor, rather. Front, flank, rear. So the second one is your flank and rear armor. You've got your unit type, your proficiency, and your movement points. Guns don't have movement points because they typically are, they don't move unless it's transported, basically. So you've got morale and casualty. Unlike guns, vehicles do not take suppression, take morale checks, or have a casualty rating. Armor, the armor protection, movement rating, reverse movement. So this is a new rule as well. Vehicle may only move in reverse in a turn in which it does not move forward, so you can't go forward and back in the same turn. That makes sense. And you've got a movement counter here, traits for both vehicles and guns, firepower, placement. It talks about facing, right? You got your firing arc, side and rear, as you can see here, vehicle and gun proficiency. They don't have a proficient firepower, instead they have proficiency rating. So this is where the shot's more difficult due to greater distance, op fire, etc. They must pass a proficiency check before rolling for the result of their fire. When a gun or vehicle takes a proficiency check, it must roll equal or less than its proficiency rating. If more than one case applies, only one check is required. Then you have specific rules for gun and vehicle versus infantry or other guns, guns and vehicle fire versus vehicles, guns and vehicle final op fire, infantry versus guns, infantry versus vehicles, stacking rules, vehicle rear vulnerability, crushing, right? Tanks can run stuff over, as we all know. Tank shock, which is only in effect by scenario special rule. Down here at the bottom, then you've got your troop carriers, right? As you would expect, they have rules for movement, concealment, mounting and dismounting, etc. Firing from carriers and firing at carriers. Routing, coxswain, panic, tank riders on armored vehicles like a bulldozer in this case. Then you've got weapons, so you've got your mortars here, artillery support. Then you can see Got some new stuff in here about resolving attack by artillery. A roll of 1 always suppresses infantry and concealed guns or destroys an unconcealed gun. So a 1 will always kill an unconcealed gun. Reverse slope blind hex. Again, this is kind of that's that Pacific or optional for Europe rules. Special anti-tank weapons, so things like bazookas, Panzerfaust, Panzerschreck, the Soviet anti-tank rifle, etc. Flamethrower rules, aircraft. So you have your Ju-87, the Stuka, the Stormovik, which was, of course, the IL-4 in the Soviet Air Force, and Yabos, which are fighter bombers. Then you've got satchel charges, canister, the Type 92 battalion gun, which is a Japanese gun. Terrain and effects. So these are all our terrain rules now. You've got buildings and woods, different types of building, huts, leveled buildings, so upper and lower level, etc. Railway, woods, open ground, road, fortifications. So fortifications got a decent amount of special type notations in here with the Pacific area. Foxholes, trenches, pillboxes, and bunkers. Caves, also big in the Pacific, of course. Fortified positions, wire, how you remove it, roadblocks, hedgerows, with a nice example. Water, river and canal, sandbar, streams, gullies, and balkas. Ocean, surf and bridging. Hindering terrain, you've got wheat fields and kunai grass, dike, road, and walls. You've got some orchards and palm trees here. Hills, movement, line of sight when you're talking about hindering. And then fire effects from that. Got smoke, mines, night rules, jungle rules, swamp rules, all kinds of stuff in here. Path, desert terrain, of course, weather, snow, monsoon, everything. Differences of summary of national differences. Starting in 1942, all Russians and Germans that are in melee against each other have their morale increased by 1 during the rout phase. Then you've got Panzer Grenadier rules, SS desperation versus the Russians. So this only applies to scenarios versus the Russians. During the rout phase, all full-strength SS units that would be eliminated for failure to rout because they failed their morale check by 1 are instead reduced and remain in place. See no quarter combat 11.2. Late war SS from 44 and 45. They're armed with assault rifles and therefore have a higher normal firepower. Their melee and close assault firepower remains 6, however. Faustniki. Near the end of the war, the Germans were reduced to deploying small teams of men armed with Panzerfaust in an attempt to stop Russian tanks. By scenario special rule, concealed German decoys may fire a Panzerfaust using their printed squad anti-tank weapon number, but the act of firing eliminates the decoy. And you got Americans with American reluctance. This is essentially, I believe, the Americans' aversion, I guess, to taking unneeded casualties as compared to, say, the Russians or the Germans. American melee rules, fire teams. Then we got Japanese specific rules, including the banzai charge. Commonwealth forces, and then optional rules. Did I miss the Russians? Maybe the Russians aren't in here. Well, then you've got optional rules, sustained fire, unconfirmed kills, campaign game rules, command and control company hub, displaced, movement, fatigue chart, and levels, regrouping. These are, of course, all optional. Then a recommendation for solo play, because when you have decoys, you need to kind of adjust for that. As far as, if you're playing solitaire, you need to account for some of that decoy and concealment rules. Then we have a nice extended example of play here with the Germans and the Russians. Then we have our glossary and index here, which is pretty extensive. And then on the final back page, you do have your event table and our terrain clarifications. And here's our design team, art, etc., etc. And again, it's from Worthington Games. So that is our rule book. So here is our scenario book. Scenario 69, Diriugino Station. Looks like a 10-turner. You got your maps here and the orientation. You're not going to use the left side, I guess, of 40 and 41. This is basically your standard layout for a scenario in this particular game series. Set up, who sets up, who moves first, your victory conditions, force exchanges, some special rules, the basic information for the scenario, and then the units that are involved with their operations range, their command points, and which edge is their route edge for the Soviets and the Germans. So you got all your units here covered. Then we've got scenario 70, blunting the spearhead, same kind of layout. 71, hot pursuit. This is all Kursk, by the way. You can tell by the date. They are in July of 43. We got hot pursuit, bunker busting. And again, you can see all the various layouts for the maps. This is in 44. So this is the Korsun pocket, scenario 73, pocket pickets. It's a 3-mapper, and you can see everything you've got here. Fighting withdrawal, still in Korsun pocket. Vladimir's Valentines. Moldovan meat grinder. Mud and blunder. Animal crackers. Bottleneck. Again, there are 16 of these. Then we have scenario 80. We'll have to take this task upon ourselves. Lubian. So this would be in Poland, right here. This is there's a lot of special rules in this one as well. And we have Himmler attacks, which I'm assuming means, Army Group Vistula's 11th SS Panzer Army launched Operation Sonnenwende. So we're getting closer to the end of the war. That's February of 45. Then we have scenario 82, to kill a king. Scenario 83, night moves. So this is getting close to Berlin, April 20th. And then we have night moves continued. There's a lot of Soviet forces in this one. Scenario 84, Heart of the Reich. So this one would be in Charlottenburg, which of course is part of Berlin. And they're attacking the Tiergarten, it looks like. And there are the forces for that as well. There you have the scenarios. We have our note here about the 12th Guard Tank Corps and so on. So they were in the desperate defense of the Kursk salient, and then they fought the Korsun pocket, then drove south into Romania and Moldova to cut off German forces around Odessa. After their initial drive into Poland, they were awarded guard status, and they became the 12th Guard. The 16th Tank Corps became the 12th Guard Tank Corps. And then, of course, they fought the bridgehead over the Vistula, advanced rapidly to the Oder, and then attempted to reach the Baltic and cut off German forces north of Stettin. Finally, they crossed the Oder and battled through bitter German resistance to the final act of the Eastern Front in central Berlin. Here is the player aid card. Pretty straightforward. Very similar, of course, to previous games. We have our terrain chart here. Situations, you combine these with the best terrain modifier. So you're talking about hindering terrain, concealment, being adjacent, moving through open ground, etc. All the situational things that could partner up with terrain to affect the combat results. And then on the back, you have your infantry proficient firepower. So these are just basically notes, artillery, gun, vehicle check. These are our squad anti-tank weapon firepower range charts for the various types of weapons. And then you've got flank, melee, gun, vehicle, infantry versus vehicles and guns, etc. And command point uses, I should say. Now we get the counters, which are very nice. These are really nice, pre-rounded. Of course, here we have some Germans, as you can see. German forces, we've got some mortars, we've got some machine guns. These are all weapons teams. And we have some Panzerfaust equipped infantry and Panzer Schreck equipped infantry, some decoys, and so on. And you got some vehicles down here. You got the Panzer 4, Panzer 3, some more Panzer 4s, various types. Then you've got some Tigers down here, some Panthers as well. Those are the Germans, and they are, whoops, two-sided, as you might expect. The stripe indicates that they are reduced. And we've got more Germans. These pop out really easy. I've got 2 foxholes that have fallen out into my hand here. But more Germans, some more Panzer 6Es. Those are, of course, the Tiger, the King Tiger, and some Stugs, etc., etc. Some Nashorns, Hetzers, Martyrs, etc. There's some Stukas and some Yabos, Flak Panzers, Foxholes, etc. And of course, we get our Soviet units. Same type of thing. Plenty of Soviets. This is 3 of 4. You can see the Soviet infantry, some of their tanks, some guns, etc. There's the T-34-85 right there. And then more here. Some of the big tanks, some Sturmovic's, some American-made M3s, and an M17. And then you've got more Foxholes and upper level artillery fire markers, etc. And our last counter sheet contains markers. So you've got op fire on that side and used on the other side. Some movement markers, some suppressed markers, your smoke markers, unconfirmed kill, illumination, sustained fire, flanking, all buildings stone, no woods or buildings, crest line, no road, command points, more command points for the various armies, turn markers, etc. All right, now we're going to take a look at some maps. Okay, here we have map 38. You can see how well done the maps are. Elevation is clearly delineated, wooded areas clearly delineated. You can tell where the roads are, everything really clean. Got a wood building over here, an orchard, etc. On the other side, we have some urban terrain. This is map 37, and you can see some of the urban terrain here. So obviously some more significant buildings. You've got some ruin type buildings as well. Again, everything, you can tell what everything is clear. It's clear. You've got a little water here and everything. Very, very nice. The maps in this game are always really good, really well done. Here we have number 39, which again has some water, some fields, some orchards, a couple of buildings, etc. Very nicely done. You can see that the counter or the hex IDs are pretty easy to read. H6, I5, etc. Here on the other side, we have 40, which again is an urban area. Got kind of a rail yard going here, perhaps a warehouse of some sort, etc. So more urban with a little bit of more rural on this side with some grass and open fields and some trees, etc., etc. You got some shell holes here. That's 40. Now we'll do 41. So again, we've got some elevation on here. You've got a railroad going, railroad going through. Again, of course, road. This would, I assume, be a railroad bridge. You do have some elevations and some buildings and some woods. 42. More like a town. You've got a bridge over the stream here. And again, all the terrain features you might expect. And then we've got 43 and 44. So here's 43. Very nice. And we flip her over. This is 44, which has more of a hill feature to it. several layers of elevation here, and some woods and a building, more like a farm, I guess. You've got a little farmhouse here, perhaps, and an orchard and some fields. That is all of the maps. There are 8 in total. You get 4 counter sheets of counters, and of course, rule book, etc., etc. So that is going to do it for our look at Stalin's favorite band of brothers. Again, this is from Worthington Games. It's just being sent to Kickstarter backers right now. I would have to assume it will be in stores, etc., probably next month, I would guess. I don't know. That's just a guess. So, really looking forward to playing this. I will likely play this sometime early in the new year, which is only a week and a half or so away from now. So probably not right away in January, but not very long, because I'm really itching to play this game. So thank you as always for watching. I appreciate it. If you have any things to say, please feel free to do so. Comments, questions, etc. are always welcome. Please consider giving the video a like or a share. Subscribe and hit the bell if you would. That would be awesome. Help support the channel. I would definitely appreciate that. If you're already a subscriber, thank you again for your support. That is going to do it for this one. My name's Joe. This is the Hexed Encounter channel. And as always, until next time, happy gaming.